Welcome to the Pencil Bob channel. I hope you enjoy my stories. Please like and subscribe, and hit that notification icon so you never miss out. Now on with the stories.
When I first moved into my neighborhood, I never had an issue with homeowners associations. In fact, I was pretty indifferent to them. The idea of a group that helped maintain the neighborhood and kept things orderly sounded fine to me. It wasn't long before I found myself on the board, thinking I could contribute in some small way. How naive that was. I went from feeling like I was part of a community to feeling like an outcast, uncomfortable in my own neighborhood. It all started when I got a little too curious about how things were run. I began to look into the HOA's operations, just out of a desire to be more informed. I was on the board, after all. It seemed logical to understand what we were responsible for. What I found left me questioning everything I had assumed about this so-called HOA. It wasn't long before I noticed that the board wasn't really doing much. The more I dug, the more I realized how poorly they were managing even the most basic tasks. The group seemed to operate on the edge of total negligence. I thought, surely, the bylaws would clarify things. Surely, they were just misunderstood or misinterpreted. So I made it my mission to procure those bylaws. It took some effort, but when I finally got my hands on them, I was floored. The rules this group had been constantly referring to, the ones they used to justify their every decision, didn't exist. I remember sitting there, the flimsy booklet in my hands, flipping through the pages, and finding nothing, absolutely nothing, that aligned with what they'd been claiming all this time. The bylaws were either non-existent or so vague that they were meaningless. That was when things started to unravel. The president, who had been a constant presence for years, suddenly resigned out of nowhere. No explanation, no warning. In their place, a new president was installed. This person was a complete stranger to me and, as far as I knew, had never attended a single meeting in the 10 years I had lived in the neighborhood. It was like they had appeared out of thin air. The board meetings became bizarre, almost surreal. At one point, during a meeting that was ironically titled HOA Quarterly Meeting, the old president, who was still hanging around behind the scenes, dropped a bombshell. "We aren't an HOA?" "What? Whoever said that?" he asked with a smug grin. My jaw hit the floor. The entire meeting had been called under the pretense that we were functioning as an HOA, and here he was, trying to rewrite history right in front of us. I could feel the tension in the room, though no one said anything. The other board members were eerily quiet, as if they were complicit or too scared to speak up. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. It was as if everything I thought I knew about this group was being ripped apart in front of my eyes. And the absurdity didn't stop there. The new president, who had barely settled into the role, started to push the idea that the dues we had been collecting were donations. Donations? That wasn't what the residents were told. They were made to believe these payments were mandatory, required to keep the community functioning. But now, with this new regime in place, the narrative was shifting. They were gaslighting the entire community. As I continued to dig, more inconsistencies came to light. For instance, the common areas, those little patches of green space that everyone assumed were HOA maintained, turned out to be city-designated parks. We had no jurisdiction over them, yet the board had been acting as if we did. I could feel the frustration boiling inside me. How had this group been allowed to operate this way for so long without anyone noticing? I couldn't take it anymore. I resigned from the board and sent them a note, bluntly suggesting they consult with an attorney. That was putting it lightly. The entire operation was so shady that I wouldn't have been surprised if legal trouble was looming on the horizon. As much as I was relieved to be free from the tangled mess of lies and manipulation, I couldn't shake the feeling that the neighborhood had turned against me. People started to gossip, and the atmosphere became weird. I could feel eyes on me whenever I walked around, as if I was some kind of troublemaker. The rest of the board remained silent, like a group of puppets with their strings cut. They just sat there, pretending nothing was wrong. The new president, instead of addressing any of the issues, began to spread rumors about me. I'd hear whispers from my neighbors, little snippets of conversation that made it clear they were being fed lies. The residents, either too complacent or too uninformed to care, seemed oblivious. It felt like a carefully orchestrated campaign to discredit me and prevent any kind of rebellion from brewing. The whole thing was maddening. But I wasn't done yet. I had information, documents that could expose the whole farce. I knew the treasurer and the president had been lying to the board about the bank accounts. I didn't have any solid proof they were stealing, but they were definitely spending recklessly. It was like watching a train wreck in slow motion, knowing you could do something to stop it, but unsure if it would even matter. Despite everything, they finally stopped calling themselves an HOA, and it seemed they had grasped the concept that dues should be voluntary. That was a small victory, but it didn't feel like one. The damage was done. My reputation in the neighborhood was in tatters, and the sense of betrayal was overwhelming. I started my own group to take care of some of the neighborhood maintenance. It wasn't much, just a few of us who actually cared about the community and wanted to see it thrive. But, of course, the former board members refused to contribute. They couldn't be bothered to lift a finger for the neighborhood now that their charade had been exposed. I was left wondering what had happened to the community I thought I knew. How had we ended up here? The whole situation was like living in a bad dream. The more I tried to wake up, the deeper I seemed to sink into the absurdity of it all. It wasn't just about the fake HOA anymore. It was about the trust that had been shattered. The neighborhood felt like a battlefield, and I was left standing alone, surrounded by the ruins of what once seemed like a close-knit community. I tried to shake off the feelings of isolation, telling myself that it didn't matter what they thought. But it did matter. It mattered a lot. Every time I saw the new president chatting with a neighbor, I couldn't help but wonder what lies were being spread about me. The paranoia was eating away at me, and I hated it. Eventually, I began to consider taking things further. I thought about escalating the situation, filing a formal complaint with the authorities. I had the evidence, after all. But what would that really accomplish? Would it bring me the sense of vindication I craved, or would it just drag me deeper into the mess? I was tired of fighting, tired of the gossip, tired of feeling like an outsider in my own neighborhood. In the end, I decided to wait and see. Maybe, just maybe, things would change on their own. Maybe the truth would come to light, and the neighborhood would realize who the real troublemakers were. Or maybe I'd just move on, let it all go, and find peace somewhere else. But even as I tried to convince myself that I didn't care, the anger simmered just beneath the surface. I wanted justice, but I wasn't sure how to get it without losing even more of myself in the process. So here I am, venting in a place where I hope people will understand. It's been a rough ride, and I'm not sure where it will end. I'd like to think that someday I'll feel vindicated, that the truth will prevail, and that the neighborhood will finally see the light. But for now, all I can do is wait and watch, hoping that the storm will pass and leave something better in its wake. And if it doesn't, well, at least I'll know I tried. The trick here is that you already did escalate things. You suggested legal ramifications by telling them they need a lawyer. Also, you may not be covered. You are not a whistleblower in this scenario because you haven't blown the whistle. However, they are already acting as if you have whistle blown. Board members have resigned. New people have magically shown up. Things are suddenly donations. They are in full gaslighting and butt-covering mode. At this point, it might be quicker just to follow through and at a minimum report the fake HOA to whoever the immediate authority is. Depending on the laws, the quickest thing might be the city or whoever is responsible for registration and let them take it from there. Is there anything that justifies a spend of $20,000 a year? Is someone laying out all that money for a block party? Or is it a potluck? Is this just some busybodies that meant well, or is your community funding someone's vacations every year? And why do they want to expand their authority? To find people? Do they find people? Because that's an entirely different can of worms. Overall, I wouldn't worry about the gossip. Over half the community doesn't pay. They already think the HOA is useless or fake. A certain percentage of those who do pay just do it just because it's not worth the trouble, and the rest don't know. You'll hardly be the only holdout. To be fair, couldn't the current board just be flat out ignorant? If this HOA has existed for decades, would it be reasonable that they just didn't invest the time to dig into the details like you did, and that they just were doing what they took over from someone else who took over from someone else who took over from somewhere else? My brother-in-law was in a very similar situation. He got on the board and discovered that the park they were collecting dues for was also a city park. They were an HOA, so that was legit, but the park wasn't theirs and they were paying for it when it was the city's responsibility. The HOA was established in the 60s and nobody on the board had any idea because nobody took the time to research. Apparently, the developer installed a playground, basketball court, and tennis court on a chunk of his property, but he ended up deeding it over to the city. This city chose not to maintain the amenities there, or did so poorly, so the original board started doing it themselves. If you like our stories, then please like and subscribe and comment, and remember to hit that bell icon so you never miss out. We have new stories almost every day. When we first moved into our townhome, I was filled with excitement and anticipation. It was a new chapter for my mom and me, a chance to create a home together. But from the very first day, dealing with the HOA became a constant source of frustration. The most recent issue, however, has been the most maddening of all. It all started with a fence. A simple fence that separated our property from Ms. Moody Fowles and another neighbor's. Last month, Ms. Moody Fowle complained to the HOA about the fence falling down. The HOA board members conducted a walkthrough and decided that all 3 units needed to share the cost of repair or replacement. They sent the HOA management company owner to deliver this news, and he was anything but pleasant. He threatened us, saying that if we didn't fix the fence, it would be torn down, and we'd be billed for the full replacement. My mom and I decided to approach Ms. Moody Fowle to discuss the situation. We had tried to be friendly when we first moved in, even bringing her home baked cookies during the holidays, but she had slammed the door in our faces. Still, we hoped we could come to an agreement about the fence. When we explained what the HOA owner had said, she was dismissive. "I don't have to listen to you at all," she said. "I will not split costs and will not repair the fence until I get something in writing." We then involved the HOA vice president, who lived across the street. He sent an email to all parties involved, stating that the fence needed to be repaired or replaced and that the costs were to be split. We thought this would resolve the issue, but it was only the beginning of our troubles. A few weeks later, we returned from a trip to look at places to relocate, hoping to find a way out of this HOA nightmare. Just as I was sitting outside, I noticed Ms. Moody Fowle had a repairman over to look at the fence. My mom went over to speak with him, apologizing for the interruption. The repairman was reasonable, and we were ready to split the cost and get it done. But Ms. Moody Fowle wasn't ready to commit. The repairman promised to return with a business card, but he never did. My mom tried to exchange numbers with Ms. Moody Fowle twice, hoping to get the repair done as soon as possible. Each time, Ms. Moody Fowle denied receiving the email from the HOA VP. We printed it out and showed it to her, but she continued to deny it, even though the email clearly listed all 3 addresses involved. Then she started questioning my mom's identity, saying, "That's not you in your photo. That's not you. You don't have long hair." It was absurd, as my mom's hair reached down her back. It felt like we were trapped in a never-ending cycle of denial and avoidance. We wanted to fix the fence before it became a more significant issue and a costlier expense. We tried explaining this to Ms. Moody Fowle, but she wouldn't listen. In desperation, we spoke to the HOA president, hoping for some guidance. But she was utterly unhelpful, suggesting we make the repair ourselves and save the receipt, then bill Ms. Moody Fowle. 15 minutes later, she returned to our house, advising us not to do that. Instead, she suggested we get a quote and put it in Ms. Moody Fowle's door. The president even said that since Ms. Moody Fowle was a longtime resident, we should consider paying the entire bill ourselves to save everyone stress. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. What does being a longtime resident have to do with splitting a shared fence? I asked her. She didn't have an answer. Feeling defeated, we decided to take matters into our own hands. We hired a repairman to fix the fence and sent the bill to the management company, seeking enforcement to split the cost. They sarcastically refused, saying they weren't our personal collection agency and that we needed to handle it with Ms. Moody Fowle directly. We sent the bill to Ms. Moody Fowle, fully expecting her not to pay. We were preparing to take her to small claims court, even for this nominal fee. It was frustrating, but we were determined to stand our ground. The infuriating part was that the management tried to make us look like the bad guys who couldn't get along with Ms. Moody Fowle. I discovered that management had violated the rules and regulations by threatening us verbally instead of in writing, which was the protocol. We learned from a former board member that the HOA was a mess. She had to file a police report on the VP because he almost hit her when she tried to expose their fraudulent behavior. The board members had nominated themselves and seemed to have a mafia-like operation going on. The president had no idea what she was doing, ignoring us when we pointed out violations of the rules and regulations. They even refused to give us the bylaws, which seemed illegal. Our community was fed up with the HOA, and many residents had moved out recently. We were stuck, though, due to the crazy housing market and inventory shortage. It didn't look like we would be able to leave for another year, at least until spring. We visited several states, but there were multiple bids on houses everywhere. I couldn't wait to leave this stressful situation behind, Despite everything, we kept pushing forward, though it often felt like we were fighting an uphill battle. We initially sought legal advice, hoping to find a way to hold the HOA accountable for their actions. However, the reality of the situation quickly set in. Each consultation revealed more complexities and obstacles than solutions, and the mounting legal fees added a financial strain that we simply couldn't bear. The prospect of a lengthy legal battle became increasingly daunting, and it was clear that our limited resources would not allow us to pursue this path. The grim reality was that we had to accept our inability to fight back through legal means. The sense of injustice was overwhelming, and the feeling of being trapped in an unwinnable situation was a bitter pill to swallow. Our hopes of finding a resolution were dashed, leaving us to endure the ongoing stress and frustration without a clear way forward. In the meantime, we tried to focus on the positive aspects of our lives, though it was often difficult to find much to be cheerful about. My mom and I spent time together, attempting to distract ourselves from the ongoing chaos by exploring new hobbies. We took up painting, hoping the vibrant colors might inject some brightness into our days. But even that was sometimes overshadowed by the constant worry about our living situation. We tried baking, filling our home with the comforting aroma of fresh bread and cookies, but the enjoyment was often interrupted by the latest HOA debacle. Still, we cherished these moments together, as they offered brief respites from the relentless stress. We reminded ourselves that this was just a temporary situation, clinging to the belief that better days were ahead, even though it often felt like a distant dream. Our patience was wearing thin as we continued to navigate the challenges of living in this community. Each day brought new frustrations, and the weight of the situation seemed to grow heavier. The HOA's demands and the ongoing conflict with Ms. Moody Fowle loomed over us like a dark cloud, making it difficult to find any sense of normalcy. We felt trapped in a cycle of disputes and hostility, with no clear end in sight. The prospect of finding peace felt elusive, as if it were always just out of reach. As we held on to the hope that we would eventually find a new home, free from the drama and stress of the HOA, the reality of our situation was rough. The housing market was unforgiving, and the thought of enduring another year in this environment was daunting. Our dreams of a fresh start seemed distant, overshadowed by the immediate challenges we faced. The struggle to maintain a sense of optimism was constant, as the brutal truth of our circumstances continued to test our resolve. At this point, it's obvious that the board has no intentions of getting involved, and the asshole neighbor has no intentions of doing anything about the fence either. Here's your alternatives. Contact an attorney and ask them how to proceed from here. Sometimes an HOA board will simply ignore the homeowner, but will suddenly take things a lot more seriously when they are contacted by an attorney. Pay the full cost of the repairs yourself. Just on principle, I would be loath to do this, but it will resolve the issue. I imagine that you could also try to take the neighbor to small claims court to try to get her to pay her share, but that in and of itself is going to be a pain in the ass, especially since you are already planning on moving. Do nothing. Let them tear it down, replace it, and let them bill both of you for the cost. At least this way you won't have to carry the entire bill yourself. Which of the three is going to be the most cost-effective, quickest solution with the least amount of aggravation is something that only you can decide. At the very least, a consultation with an attorney wouldn't be that expensive and would be a good place to start. Guaranteed it would be a problem pre-sale, and any decent realtor will tell you to fix it prior to the sale. Seriously, a $500 fix could change your asking price by $2 to $3K at minimum. Be careful paying for the repairs yourself, as you likely won't get reimbursed. Get the quote from the handyman. Email it to Ms. Moody Fowle, an HOA president and vice president, and any other HOA member, with read receipts turned on. State that per HOA VP costs were to be split. Then state that the president offered the solution of having the HOA reimburse you for costs if the neighbor was unwilling to pay. Then ask clearly and plainly, would you rather the HOA pay in full for services and us reimburse them, or would you like us to pay the HOA prior to the invoice being sent to them? Don't leave an opening for any other option. Leave it at an A or B decision with no solution for C. The company doing the repairs should be able to invoice the HOA with no issue. Then the cost is on them, and they will have to deal with Ms. Moody Fowle. Plus, with read receipts on, you'll be able to show that Ms. Moody Fowle read the email and is refusing to work with you. First of all, do not ever engage with individual board members, especially when there is a property management company involved. Individual board members do not have any authority to provide direction. Do engage the property management company. The proper course of action has been taken by the property manager by issuing a verbal warning and verbal direction of what you are to do. He's giving you and your neighbor the opportunity to rectify this without the HOA having to incur any additional costs. Unfortunately, this is not being done at the fault of your neighbor, so the next step of this process is for the property manager to issue a written warning. The written warning will spell out clearly to your neighbor what she was already told, but now she will have no "I didn't get it" argument. If she continues to fail to cooperate, the next course is for you to provide all of the details of your attempts to rectify this to the property manager so that it can be then turned over to the board, whereas they can decide what to do from there.
I would like to thank you for watching the video to the end. To encourage us to make more videos, please like, subscribe, comment, as well as share. Check out this other video if you haven't already.